All right, hello everybody. Welcome to October's PatternFly community meeting. We have a handful of updates today from the PatternFly team, probably a little bit of time at the end for questions or spontaneous updates of other kinds if you have them. My name is Nicole. I'm the PatternFly Scrum Master, one of the React devs. And yeah, let's just kick it off. The first update today is actually going to come from Evan about some general updates, some of the bigger news items. So I'll pass it over to you and let you. Do you have something you want to share on your screen?
I do. Yep, I'm going to steal the screen share from you right now. Oops. There we go. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Well, what this slide deck lacks in visuals, it makes up for in exciting content. So I'm here to talk to you about PatternFly virtual face-to-face that we had last week across the PatternFly team, as well as some other individuals. So virtual face-to-face, I realized putting that together kind of maybe doesn't make sense. So just a quick kind of run through of what exactly I'm talking about. So the PatternFly design and development teams and management, as well as some of the user experience researchers and developers. PatternFly is part of the broader user experience team here. So we do have a lot of help that leans in. And so we got together as a group last week, set aside a few days to connect, talk through some priorities and workflows, and plan for an upcoming major release. And the exciting part for some of us is that after a couple of years out of the office, we were able to get together in some small groups and also still maintain our remote web conferencing. So all team members could dial in. We have some remote employees, we have some remote interns. So it was great being able to see some people face to face and others on the line as well, to make sure everyone was included. So why did we do this? We wanted to take a step back just from a couple of years of heads down work, which is great, just to kind of appreciate what we've accomplished over the last few years, where we stand currently, make sure everyone is on the same page with kind of the accomplishments that we've had. It's always good to take a breath there. Review some current initiatives and ongoing progress towards those. So just kind of bring everyone up on the team, since we've got design kind of at the beginning of the funnel and the PatternFly workflow, and then React developers kind of at the end. Sometimes we're all looking at different pieces of the puzzle. So really kind of connect those dots. One big focus was to just identify any areas to improve cross-team collaboration. So I think we function pretty well as a team, and we, like I mentioned, we do have design, we have our core dev team, our React dev team, we have content designers as well, and then we do have other community members and also other team members throughout UXT at Red Hat as well, who lean in to contribute. So while the process works great, I think there's always ways to find improvements. And with some changes recently in design and some designers kind of really focusing their efforts on PatternFly, just want to make sure we jump on that update and take advantage of those changes to really kind of streamline the communication process and take a step back and say, okay, what we have is working well. Doesn't mean it can't be improved or couldn't be better. So let's kind of think outside the box and see if we can come up with some of those ways to improve those areas. Also, a fun chance to discuss some innovative ideas, some new approaches, like I just mentioned, to kind of rethink what's working and what's not. Also look at new technologies or advancements that have come up that maybe as a design system we can't throw right in when they're hot off the press, but a good chance to kind of evaluate what's out there and is there anything that could be helpful for us to think about bringing in. And then also just some of our bigger goals as a group. It's always good to kind of get at Red Hat, and we like to kind of keep our conversations open source, just like our code. So it's good, rather than make decisions top down and kind of spread that out to the team, to flip that on its head and bring the whole group together and kind of talk through what our goals are, what we think we can accomplish, and how we can get there, and then form our plans around that. So let's see. So we have a lot of different topics we're talking about over 2.5 days. And that's something we'll continue to iterate on, hopefully for future meetings. But the core goal of all of this is really, what are our users, our consumers going to get out of this? If we want to work on this one area, or if we see this cool new technology that we could pull in, if it's not improving the PatternFly user experience, it's, I don't want to say a waste of our time to talk through, but it's maybe not the most productive use of our time. So we really focused every conversation we had around what value is this going to bring to the end user. And if it's something that speeds up our workflow, that we can turn around deliverables faster, that's great. If it's something that can improve design handoff, or can reduce the number of bugs, or speed up our testing, all of those are going to be wins. And some of them we may benefit from as well in the interim, but ultimately want to keep the end user goal in mind. So I'll quickly run through some of the topics just at a high level that we touched on. So I mentioned the design dev workflow collaboration, also handoff requests. I thought it was really interesting. Some of the conversations we had highlighted both from PatternFly, but also product development perspective. There's a design team building the designs, and then there's a development team building the code from the designs. And there's probably a lot of additional information that could be included in that handoff process to reduce the back and forth, or a developer figuring out which components to put together to build out that design if the designer's already made that intentional decision. So kind of crossing those lines and saying, hey, if we had this from you, that'd be awesome. Do your tools do that? And then kind of working with each other to maybe answer some of those questions. Content workflow, and that refers to the documentation on our website around components, our design guidelines, even the micro copy that goes in each example. What does that workflow look like, and who owns each piece of that? Website review and improvements. So we've done some research studies recently, and I believe talked through some of those on these calls for how our website can best be organized. We're always trying to think of, how can we help people find exactly what it is they're looking for, make sure the information they need is kind of at their fingertips. So talk through some of that. Technical POCs. So again, what are some of the questions? We kind of framed this conversation for, what are the questions that we get directly that we answer, we engage with kind of one-on-one situations to answer questions that we see repeatedly. And based on that, are there tools or maybe new new applications or little interactive examples that we could come up with that would help kind of address those questions and make it a little easier, so that those one-off engagements, while we definitely welcome them, if there's a resource that we can make that'll answer those questions for you, definitely want to make sure that we're thinking about those. So some of the things we looked at were like a drag and drop UI builder that lets you place components on a page and kind of spit out the code. So that blurs that design and development line a little bit. And trying to think, is that something that we could create and turn into a useful tool that wouldn't be, an additional step, but really a benefit to our users. Also the idea of a theme builder. So you could tweak something like our CSS variables and, create a custom theme and then spit out a style sheet based on that. So really just trying to think of what are these things that may be helpful and may kind of take some load off of our designers or developers in the end. A couple other topics. So technical trainings, we ran through GitHub Actions, which are the automations that our code base uses in GitHub. So whenever we merge a PR, for instance, we automatically push a new pre-release version to NPM. And there's a preview link that's created, and we run accessibility tests and a lot of these little automated tasks behind the scenes. So we wanted to share that knowledge out a little bit more from a kind of centralized infrastructure, core team to the developers who are building the code that's running through these tests. So we kind of disseminate that information. Also code mods. So we're looking at an upcoming major release. I think I've got some more info on the next slide. Last release code mods, which automate some of those updates, those breaking changes that might be included in a major release. Code mods are just little snippets that we can create that will make those changes for you. So if we rename a prop, or if we remove a prop, or change a component name, things like that. If you use that 1,000 times in your code, we can run a little snippet that'll actually go through, find those, and make those changes. So again, some training in that area based on the feedback we had on those previously. And then PatternFly extensions, talked through this goal of unifying kind of bigger experiences, with PatternFly components being kind of the core building blocks and extensions being these broader shared experiences that are identified across products and can be contributed to PatternFly, both for documentation and also for awareness. So again, a good handful of topics. There's some other info in there, but I think these were kind of the big highlights. So the last slide I have here is more of the takeaways. So that's what we did. This is some of the places that we landed. So first off, our major release. We may have hinted at this previously, but we've been doing a lot of setup and infrastructure support to make sure we've got this development workflow parallel to our current release cycle. So we're looking at development throughout Q1 into the start of Q2 next year, with testing and iteration coming after that with our product testers here at Red Hat to help identify any bugs, kind of give feedback on the upgrade process. This is where those code mods that we built out last year, we got a lot of great feedback that they expedited that process. So we're hopeful to make some good headway there as well. And right now we're targeting a June release, which would be, what is that, 6-7 months from now, quick math. So we'll definitely keep you updated there. That's our plan at the moment. And just wanted to make sure that we have that on your radar. Some other takeaways that we have were just improved collaboration. So again, tighter alignment between PatternFly design and dev teams, and really just kind of blurring that line a little bit. So there's not a handoff process per se from one team to the next, but more of a collaborative approach all the way through from component or enhancement, ideation and design through delivery. And then the last one, following up on the major release, is just the cadence we're looking to work towards. So historically, we've kind of held back all breaking changes, all major updates, as long as we can. And then when we can't wait any longer, or there's an urgent need, or things are getting stale, we do this major release, and everything kind of the floodgates open a little bit. We really want to avoid that model. It doesn't work well for our consumers having to update and have all these changes. It doesn't work well for us, having our hands tied a little bit, for a few years at a time. So our annual release cadence, we can kind of continue to bring more details to the table, but the idea is that we'll do smaller, more focused releases, major releases each year, and that'll allow us, to plan ahead a little bit better, to be able to be a little bit more agile as far as if there are improvements or changes. Composable components is a good example of, there's a lot of ways that we've found that our consumers actually use PatternFly that don't align with the way that we've built PatternFly. So we'd love to kind of, adopt to that, and having this more regular release cadence will give us, chances to actually push some of these newer changes out without having to wait a couple of years and kind of keep some of the requests kind of at an arm's length. I think that's the last slide I had there. So yeah, anyways, just wanted to recap everyone here on what the PatternFly team has been up to over the last week. It was a busy week for us with all these conversations and a lot of follow-ups to work through, but we're really excited. It's really great to get some momentum here, towards the end of the year, where sometimes you think of things starting to slow down. We're kind of chalking into overdrive a little bit for how we can continue to push ourselves and improve the system. So thanks for listening to me there. I'll go ahead and wrap up and pass it back to you, Nicole.
All right, thank you. I will quickly share my screen again. I'll also put the links again in the chat to the slides and agenda for today. I'll also make sure to include Evan's slides when I send all the slides out to the mailing list after this meeting as a follow-up. So stay tuned for that. But before we move on to some of the various team updates across the PatternFly team, I just wanted to make sure you are aware that the links for our latest release, which was a few weeks ago now, are there. The notes are live. That you can find the links in the slides I've included in the chat. And ideally, we would be releasing the next release. We're currently code frozen, wrapping up the next release. Our release cadence would mean that usually we'd release today or in the days surrounding today. And because of the face-to-face, we're still wrapping it up. So it'll be hopefully out by the end of the week, optimistically. So we'll see. It depends on how testing goes. But stay tuned. So, yep, this is milestone 13. And we'll be seeing some of the highlights presented in the rest of this meeting. But before that, I am going to hand it over to Erin to talk about some content updates.
Sure.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, I was going to say either you can go through each slide or I can share my screen and go through the slides.
I can do it, I guess. I'm already here.
Sure. I'll just tell you when to go.
Sure.
So, hi, everyone. My name is Erin. If you haven't met me before, I'm an intern on the content design team, and I started earlier this year as a summer intern and have been able to continue in the fall focusing on PatternFly content needs. So today I just wanted to overview what has been a major project of mine within PatternFly content, and that is component documentation. So I have a few short slides, and then I'll ask Nicole to open a link to the website and kind of mouse through more of a visual run through of something that's actually already live on the website. But the need for component documentation was identified before my time as an intern. So the team was able to discover that users had a need and a desire for more content on PatternFly, and particularly more documentation around components and component examples and how to use them properly. So early on in my internship this summer, I met with some designers and developers to design a plan to address these issues and concerns and meet users' needs a little bit better. And since then, I've been implementing some work across a handful of components, which I'll walk through in a little bit. And obviously, there's a really long list of components to catch up on there, but ultimately, this outcome will lead to a better web experience for users. You can go to the next slide. And the issue with not having documentation for component examples is that there's little to often no context for users as to what the examples are doing. So users aren't able to get as much value as they can from the website to meet their needs. How to apply each example can be unclear to users, and the implementation process for different examples is also obscured. Go to the next slide. And then the plan that we decided on as a team was to add some content to each component example page, which would kind of do these number of things that are on the screen here. So we would add content that would explain what each example is doing, maybe when to use the example, give more specific direction on how to implement the code for that example, link to other components that may be related or necessary to understand an example, also other documentation pages that can make it more understandable, and then also looking at the hierarchy and ordering of the examples to make sure that things are thematically close to others that make sense, and that the flow of examples makes sense to the user. Good, next slide, thanks. So my process so far has been to draft content in a PR for each component, and that content is informed by the code for each example as well as the design guidelines for the component. That content is further refined based on developer feedback to make sure that we're giving enough information and doing so succinctly. Once everything is good to go, the changes are merged and then go live. And so the eventual outcome, and it gets better and closer with every update for a component, is that examples will have more clarity, more context, and the ultimate PatternFly experience will be more unified and stronger for a user. And so this is my last slide, and then we'll open up that link at the bottom. But just to give a snapshot overview of what's been done, there are 5 components where these changes have already been implemented. There are another 3 where they're very close to being live on the site. And then we'll be meeting with the team to decide a plan forward based on feedback from the face-to-face and check in on the priority of what components to head for next. So if you can open that alert component. This is a example, I think, that covers most of the use cases that you'll see across the component documentation. So at the top here, You can see that there's just copy added that is contextualizing the example, explaining what's going on. And then for examples that maybe have multiple variants or multiple things going on with an example, we're adding tables to help make that more digestible for users. If you scroll down a little bit, maybe a couple examples. Yeah, this one's good. We're also making specific call outs to React properties and React components to make it easier for users to understand what's going on in the code, make it easier for them to understand what a React property does, when to use a React property, what other properties and components they interact with, and explain what's going on in the nearby example. And then if we can scroll down a little bit more, that expandable alerts. Those are some of the links that I was talking about to other components and also to other docs like the alert or the accessibility documentation for content that doesn't necessarily fit in line with the examples, but is maybe essential or important for users to read. And then I think that's it for the content, but if you just kind of glance at the table of contents on the right, you can kind of get a sense that this is organized in an intentional way. So all of the inline alert information is together, all of the live region information is together. And then also we're starting with simpler examples like just overviewing the variants and getting into more complex things later on that might build on some of the information that's given earlier on. And yeah, that's pretty much where it stands now. Like I said, there's, I think, 5 components where this is already live. There's a lot to go through, but I think that this will add a lot of strength and value to the example pages. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to try and answer too.
Yeah, or any requests. If there's a component you've been wrestling with, let us know. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's definitely been a great exercise, I think, for the whole team to walk with Aaron through this, and it's been awesome work. So thank you, Aaron. And you're getting lots of love in the chat, so don't miss it. All right. Next up, we are going to hear from the core team. We have some core updates. And I think everybody's here and prepared. Let's see. First up, we have an update from Burundi about a menu update. Hello.
So this will be very brief. So for the menu component, we had a request come through asking for the ability to indicate or provide indication for a dangerous menu item. So we've added that here as a modifier. So now a developer or designer can add this this danger state and also get support for screen readers. And that pretty much concludes the menu update. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next up, Matt has a form group update.
All right, let me just grab this screen.
I do have links in the slides as well for anyone else on the call who wants to see these presentations live on the website. You can go on the slides and open these links.
You see that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It is pretty small.
Okay.
Just so you know.
We don't need to read the code, so pretty straightforward update to the form labels, wherein a bug was reported that if there is a required field or a popover, those items would wrap when they ran out of horizontal space. And so we stripped out any unnecessary spaces, standard spaces, and replaced those with non-breaking spaces. And the result is much more expected wrapping of the last word. You could string several words together if you wanted to, non-breaking spaces, but yeah, so they will wrap now with the last word in that string. And that's it.
Takes you 30 seconds to present, but that's a lot of CSS magic right there,
Yeah,
for sure.
Kind of tricky, but
Kind of tricky.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Figure it
Thank you. Next up is Sarah.
Okay, I'll share my screen. And I apologize. I have people working in the house, and so I'm outside, so there might be a little bit of road noise. All right. So this is about the text input group, which is a beta component. And we encountered the problem where if there were lots of chips in the version that has the filters, so the filter chips that you can see here, if there are a lot of chips, then the chips started shrinking down so far that you couldn't really tell what they were. So we explored a bunch of different options. Originally, we were going to have that chip group scroll, and then we realized that that wasn't a great solution because it was hard to tell that it could scroll. We tried putting shadows on there to indicate that there was a scroll, and that turned out not to be too feasible. And then through a couple different iterations, we finally settled on having the chip group wrap, so you can see it wrapping here in the filters expanded version. So the chips will keep wrapping down, and the text input that goes along with it wraps below the chips. That was another exploration that we did to try to get that text input group to wrap in line with the chips, but just because of the structure, the HTML structure that we have, that didn't really work. So this is what we ended up on, and as you can see, it will grow vertically, but then you never get chips that you can't read, and you never get a text input group. A text input that's too small to be typing into. So that's it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. I will also call out for anyone who's curious that if you are thinking that you're going to have search inputs and filters like that have 15, 20 chips, we also do have a solution on PatternFly to place the chips beneath the search input in a toolbar. So that's another thing we can do as well. So hopefully between those two solutions, people can find nice ways to communicate about a lot of applied filters or search tokens or things like that. Okay, great. Next up, the last core update is going to come from Eric.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so we have a new feature added onto our button component. Previously, for a progress button, you're kind of limited to a few of the button variants. You have the primary, secondary, and plain button variants with a progress. Now we have an inline link variant with progress. So for the HTML implementation, it's fairly similar to the other buttons. You have for the variation without the progress, the loading icon, you just add the PFM progress class to the button as you normally would. For the loading icon to be visible, you would add in the PFM in progress class, and then for the PFC spinner element, instead of adding a PFM, MD or LG, so on and so forth, as a modifier class, we added the PFM inline class. And it may not be a typical use case, but I thought it was pretty neat seeing it during the progress of this implementation. So I just quickly want to show what this kind of all looks like inline. If I can uncomment it all correctly, that is. So we have some lorem ipsum text, and I just kind of threw in the inline loading button here. So you have it, without the loading spinner, and then here you have it with the spinner to kind of see it in context of possibly within a paragraph. And that's about it for the inline link progress button.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see. Up next, we have a handful of React updates from the React devs. So first, we have a couple from Katie. I'll pass it off to you, Katie.
All right. Let me share my screen. I believe that now should be sharing.
Yep.
Okay. So first up, we have a new component. This is the icon component, which, unlike maybe the name suggests, it's more of a container for our icons. So it's specifically, it lets icons of different sizes and spinner components as well replace each other without shifting surrounding content. So it kind of controls the sizing, dimensions, and some colors. It gives it a unifying container. Up at the top here, if you're curious about our icons, we have a link to our icon guidelines that tells you what icons we have and some more information about when you might use those icons. So going over some of these examples, the icon component will basically look like this, where you just pass in whatever icon you want to display through to it. You can also give the icon component different sizes to control the sizing of the icon, as well as different colors to give the icon a different color. And then where the icon component really shines is these sizing icons within the container. So you see we've got 4 different icons here that have different sizes, but they're all within an XL container effectively. So they match this large icon in size. So if you ever had to replace an icon of different sizes, and any of the text around it would not change because it's all in the same container size. The icon component also allows icons to be inline by default. So without any extra fiddling, you can just put this inline modifier and it will adjust size based on the surrounding text and color as well. You can also specify the icon size outside of being inline. So you can just say small through extra large if you want to divert from just an inline icon. The icon component also allows progress state. By default, this will be one of our spinner components. It's a medium. So you see if you toggle the in progress state, it will replace the icon seamlessly. You can also manually define this in progress icon. So this is a larger spinner that's taking the place, but this can be any icon you want. I just used a spinner for this example. I think that about covers the icon component. Give you a second if there are any questions. All right. So then next up, we have another new component. This is our select next component. So this is a new version of our select component. You can find it on our select page in the React Next tab. Now, unlike our previous select, this select is basically internally using all of our new menu components to be more composable, and basically you can customize it more easily than you would with our initial select. These examples are going to look very familiar because they're very similar to our current select examples. So we've got our single select with the little check mark there, grouped select, which is just 2 different groups of options, checkbox select, which shows our checkboxes, and then we have our type ahead select, so you can filter results and also use your keyboard to select, as well as a multiple type ahead, which is for the same example. You can use the keyboard to select all of your selections. Now, if we look at these prop tables really quick, I want to call out the exposed props here are kind of what is basically going to be used with a generic select use case, but these wrap the menu components. So anything you can do with the menu components, you can still pass all of these props to select, even if they're not listed here. So select group has only a few props exposed that basically what you might want to use for a select use case. Any other components in our menu group are also able to be passed here. And I think that about covers it. I guess another one thing to last call out is we have these composable menu demos just showing you maybe this is what select next does with all of these extra like handling bits about doing different keyboard setup. The select next component will do all of this for you instead. So it's basically like these demos, but way less setup. So you just get to focus on passing in what your data is and what your toggle is. So it's a bit simpler setup. Any questions? All right, then I think that's it for me.
Awesome. I'll add to what you just said and say that this is, I think, the second of our next implementation of our drop-down like components. The first one is the drop-down component. So we're in process of kind of building a second implementation or a newer updated implementation of these drop-down like components so that they can share a lot more logic under the hood, but also be a lot easier for us to maintain long term and give consumers a lot more flexibility, since we also do have the menu component, which has many, many features available. And you can utilize any of these in our new select implementation. But these are all brand new. So the new dropdown and the next dropdown and the next select, we absolutely would love to hear feedback on the API, on our first pass at building these out. You'll probably be seeing more and more coming down and being released soon for other drop-down like components. But we absolutely would love to be in conversation with products, with the consumers as they check them out. So reach out if you have any questions or feedback. Thank you. All right, next React update comes from Eric. We'll give Eric the floor again.
Hello again. Share. Okay, so we have another new feature, this time for our notification badge component. Essentially, we added a new property called isExpanded, which, as I note here, when you pass it in, it will set the ARIA expanded attribute under the hood. It'll also apply some visual styling, which matches the styling for hover and focus, which I can show real quick here. This example is set up so that on click, the isExpanded property will essentially be updated. So if I click here and move away, it still has that styling. Whereas before, if you focused away or hovered away, it would go back to the default styling. So if I click again, it goes back to how it was. And a note here, our notification drawer React demos, which I have open in this tab here. This is our basic notification drawer demo, and I have dev tools open below. So you can see, if I hover over this, it's the actual notification badge. And if I click it, you can see that the ARIA expanded attribute does get updated, and the notification drawer opens up from the side. And if I click it again, it goes to ARIA expanded is false and closes the drawer. And that's pretty much it for the update for the notification badge.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, next, another React update from Jenny. About some text area and text input updates.
Hey, everybody. All right. So exciting, neat little new feature. We have a read-only variant for text input and text area. So right now I'm showing the text area. And as you see before, we had sort of the same state, like visual appearance for disabled and read-only. But now we have this plain read-only variant. So if we check this, you can see that it just kind of fades to white. And you have this little resizable thing in the corner here still. But visually, the appearance is different. And you can change this appearance by setting the read-only variant prop in text area to either plain or default. And this is actually something I even ran into product before, where like we wanted a read-only input box, but it only had disabled styling, so we had to write some fancy custom CSS to sort of overwrite that, but no longer, which is fun. And yeah, exciting little neat thing. And we also have that going on in text input, as you see right here. So there's that, and you can see that as well. And also you can set that behavior using the same read-only variant prop down here as well. And yeah, that's about it for this new read-only feature. I will be back momentarily with an exciting org update to share. There we go.
Yes, yes, little teaser. But before we do that, we'll first hand it over to Jeff with the last React update.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, so share my screen here. All right, so recently, yeah, so I've been doing some work on the wizard and basically making it more composable. That was the original intention. Just like that was the original main purpose and goal of this effort. And as a part of that, there were certainly a lot of changes involved. So first off, it's like these examples that we have here, the 3 that exist in the React Next tab. And that's where you would find it under the wizard component on our PatternFly documentation page here. So we haven't quite created like full symmetry between the existing examples, which there are, a dozen of them here and only a few here, but I tried to capture a lot of the new functionality in this kitchen sink example, which I encourage you to check out because it kind of encapsulates a lot of the new features that we're providing, but also showcasing the composability that I just mentioned. But so just, I guess, mainly for the devs, I can kind of go down a quick list of changes here. So so first, the types were improved for readability and specificity. As a part of that, I also created some type guards. Type guards help you differentiate between prop types, and converted the wizard to a function. As a part of the converting of the wizard class-based component to a function, that went from 32 props to 14, and almost 600 lines of code to 200. So this is also factored into, like, it's just a more manageable component for maintainability in our project space. So that should help developers out to maintain this in the future. Also, context was expanded upon. So context previously only really covered the wizard footer and actions that you would take around the footer, but now it's storing more information about the steps and the status of them. So status is one of the new properties that exists, and that is what is being used to show this red exclamation icon next to step 1 here. Right now, that's I mean, this whole thing is beta, but the status is kind of like beta of beta, where it's, we only have an error status and a default status at the moment, and maybe we expand on that in the future. I'm not sure, but yeah. So there's also like I mentioned the reduction of props and the lines of code, but the simplification of those props and the localization of them within their respective ancillary wizard component spaces. Yeah, and then also as a part of that, this is way more unit tested. So about 60 or so unit tests were written for the wizard and all of its supporting components. So it's a much more hardened version of what already exists. And yeah, so some of the default behavior that you'll get without having to write anything special is just the back button is disabled by default. The structure is, and this is kind of just a basic example demonstrating some of the main, I guess, composability is just the specifying of wizard steps underneath the wizard. A wizard step can now have its own custom nav item, which you would use just by specifying nav item, and then whatever React element that you want there. You can also, on the wizard itself, specify your own custom nav, which would take over the space of the left side of this whole left side here. Those are also a couple new features. What else? Yeah. So and also there's an example over here where you might want to only enable the steps once you visited them. Oh boy. And I guess that's it's not working at the moment, but I think we fixed that recently for the old examples. But anyway, it's like, you know, about, what is it, 100 lines of code to capture that logic, and then over here we have kind of a built into a single property, which you can specify using is step visit required, and you can see that the other steps here are disabled, and once you click through them, they're now enabled permanently. So some upcoming things are review components that will kind of fold into the composable, I don't know, I guess, library of things that are associated to wizards. And that'll capture some common practices that at least I'm seeing in the OCM space in terms of just displaying data that is accumulated through form inputs before you submit that wizard, and all of those all of that form data. And then also be recreating all those existing examples and maybe consolidating where it makes sense to, and probably break down this kitchen sink example to make it a little simpler. What else? I guess I can show real quick. There's also the toggling of visibility. That's a thing that you can do. And also you can toggle error status here in this example. And as I mentioned, that you can have a custom nav item. This is an example of a custom nav item here where I've changed the color of it. You can also update the footer no matter where you are in the wizard. So in this case, I have an asynchronous next button that takes you to the review page. I think that covers most of it. I'm going to stop, and if there's any questions, let me know.
I'll emphasize that this is similar to our next implementation of drop-down like components. This is our new beta next implementation of our wizard. So with the major release coming up, we would absolutely love to hear people's feedback on these new implementations. They're easy to use if you want to pull them into your code base and test. There's a next directory that you just would update your import path to use. So the documentation of those components on the website does talk about that. If there's any confusion or any questions about how to take a look or test and play with these next implementations, let us know. All right. And now our last update is an update to the website that Jenny's gonna present. Hand it back over to Jenny.
All right. Hello again. Let's see. So a new feature that went in to org for this most recent release was this top sticky header that you see here. So if we go and check out the wizard that Jeff was just demoing, we have, this is a good example of like where that might be particularly useful to see that sticky top nav. So we have a bunch of different demos and a bunch of different things in React and Core. So if we want to click through different areas here, we can do that. So we can go right to React Next and check out the new wizard, and it takes you to the top of the page and you see everything that's mentioned here. We can also, scroll down, look at the React demos, and it just works really smoothly, always scrolls you to the top. You can check out the design guidelines and really anything in this toolbar. It's all here. Also, you get the table of contents that you can see pretty clearly as well. And you can click on that from anywhere here too. And that works for every component. And yeah, that's all over our website now where you see it. So that is about it for me.
Great. Great, thank you. Oh, Titani has raised her hand. Yes, Titani.
Yeah, hi. I forgot to add it to the agenda, but I wanted to just mention that we have added support for React 18 on an experimental basis. So if people want to upgrade to React 18 and try it out, they can. It's not tested. We haven't done any like thorough testing of React 18. So if you run into any issues, please open some issues for us to take a look at them. All right, thank you.
All right, awesome. I am going to pull up the final slide with some information. Yeah, I will be sending out a recording of this meeting along with all slides so you can have access to the links to the PatternFly mailing list. And so if you are not subscribed to that, the link to do so is on the last slide here. We also do have an importable PatternFly community calendar, which will keep you up to date to changes in community events and also gives you some insight into projected PatternFly release windows. So we're in the midst of one right now. My contact information is here if you would like to present or have any questions about these meetings. And our next office hours, where you can ask any questions or bring anything to the attention of the PatternFly team, is next Wednesday on November 2nd. I also have pushed out our next community meeting a little bit since it would normally fall during a US holiday or very close to a US holiday here. So I'm moving it out just a little bit to kind of capture the space, the time in between the end of the year, which also has quite a number of holidays. So we have one more community meeting in 2022 that will be in mid-December. That's all the updates I have. Does anybody else have any other questions today? All right. Well, great. Thank you everybody for your time and for coming out this month. And I look forward to seeing you all in December. Can you believe it's already talking about December? Whew. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thanks.